I'm going to commence. We're missing a few people over here. Hopefully they're going to show up real soon. I just wanted to ask the committee, we're obviously having some challenges today, and we very much wanted to have the agencies in front of us. So there is the possibility next week, Wednesday, to pick up some of this if we needed to. So I'm just want to let you know that if they are willing, we may, if we need, ask you to come back next week. But let's see what we can do today. All right, so I want to introduce our guests. Please. We have the National Energy Board. I have Peter Watson, Chair and Chief Executive Officer. I have Robert Stedman, Chief Environment Officer, and Jim Fox, Vice President, Integrated Energy Information and Analysis. With Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador Offshore Petroleum Board, I have Scott Tessier, Chair and Chief Executive Officer, Dave Burley, Director of Environmental Affairs, and Susan Gover. Okay, thank you. General Counsel. With the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, I have Michael Binder, and he's the President and Chief Executive Officer. I am rushing because I want to hear from you. Who would like to go first? Please.
Thank you.
Mr.
Bonjour.
Watson, thank you.
Bonjour, and thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read my entire statement. I will just be introducing kind of a summary of some of the key points in my statement that I understand members will receive copies of. So again, thank you for inviting us to appear today. Our work regulating energy infrastructure has placed us in the midst of some of the most important public policy debates in Canada over the last few years, and it's very clear that Canadians are passionate about environmental stewardship, regional and cumulative effects, and the evolving status and nature of Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples. They have strong and often divergent views on these topics, and we often see this passion in our hearings, which becomes a venue for debating some of these contentious issues. Many of these issues are at a regional scale, and one of our challenges is that the National Energy Board's hearings are necessarily limited in nature in that we apply the specific powers and legislative authorities to discrete project applications. We note that the government is proposing to create space in the Canadian Energy Regulator Act to allow for more transparent direction to the regulator on broad policy matters. Moving forward, the organization could benefit from this type of general, broad policy clarity as the overarching policies and priorities continue to evolve in the future to ensure that appropriate mechanisms are in place to assess whether a specific project fits into the greater policy framework. I'd like to emphasize that this should entail regional and cumulative effects frameworks that are built in collaboration across multiple levels of government. In addition, there are many other proposed changes in Bill C-69, and few are more pressing for us than the integrated impact assessments between the Impact Assessment Agency and the CER. The CER, the Impact Assessment Agencies, and other departments and agencies will need to work side by side to capitalize on our respective strengths, our expertise, and our authorities so we can build a new system that works well for all stakeholders. As a key partner in the new federal impact assessment review process, we bring extensive knowledge and technical expertise on energy markets, pipeline design, construction and operation, and the environmental, social, health, economic, and safety aspects of energy projects. As I said, we also have the knowledge and expertise to assess market conditions and the economic need for the project. There's need for alignment throughout the system, but with respect to integrated reviews, three areas in particular. The first is timelines and stop clock provisions. The next is with respect to the setting and amending of project conditions, because conditions play a critical role in mitigating the risks and harms associated with the project. And the last area is with respect to the planning phase of an impact assessment. We will work together across our agencies to learn from one another and align our respective approaches so that we can ensure that we're providing a single window process for all stakeholders and that the review processes ultimately result in decisions that are timely, fair, and technically sound. I think it's also important to recognize that the Canadian Energy Regulator Act formalizes some best practices that we've already initiated at the NEB, and one final example I want to point out is our work with the Indigenous Advisory and Monitoring Committees on the Trans Mountain Project and the Enbridge Line 3 Replacement Program. These committees were co-developed with Indigenous peoples along those two routes, and they support collaborative, inclusive, and meaningful Indigenous involvement in the monitoring of environmental, safety, and socioeconomic matters related to those projects over the project lifecycle. Bill C-69 would formalize our ability to establish such processes and similar processes for life cycle oversight on other initiatives moving forward. In conclusion, I just want to say also that I'm exceptionally proud of the dedicated public servants in the National Energy Board, our staff and members at the National Energy Board. We are ready and committed to work with our federal colleagues to implement the proposed legislation and deliver processes that are transparent, efficient, and fair for all participants and stakeholders in our process. Merci beaucoup, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was very fast. Thank you. Appreciate that. Who would like to go next? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share our views on Bill C-69. I've had the privilege of leading a world-class safety and environmental regulator since 2013. For over 30 years, the CNLOPB has served as an effective agent of independent joint management of the Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador offshore area. Safety and environmental protection are paramount in all board decisions. We've reviewed Bill C-69 and have been discussing with governments our role in the new legislative framework. I'd like to begin, though, with a brief summary of the board's recent experience in this area. Since 2003, the board has completed 57 environmental assessments and an additional 8 strategic environmental assessments, or SEA, updates. Public comments are invited at several stages in these processes, and in the interest of transparency, relevant documents are posted publicly. The CNLOPB is currently updating our strategic environmental assessment for the Labrador Shelf, an initiative that's co-chaired by the Nunatsiavut government. In our submission to the expert panel on environmental assessment processes in the fall of 2016, we expressed support for the Government of Canada's interim EA principles. Similarly, today I can confirm our support for the objectives of Bill C-69. The CNLOPB recognizes legislative renewal can provide opportunities to improve the delivery of our mandate. Section 6 of Bill C-69 speaks to the principles of joint management. We're pleased that the government has expressed its recognition of the importance of the Atlantic Accord. And we're also pleased to see in related documents that projects with potential for smaller effects in areas of federal jurisdiction may be subject to other regulatory processes under life cycle regulators like the CNLOPB. That said, our analysis has identified specific areas of concern and inconsistency between Bill C-69 and the Accord Acts that governments have been made aware of and appear open to considering. I'll also speak briefly to our initial input on key issues in the 2 related discussion papers, which we've reviewed in conjunction with the legislation. Our first area of concern is with respect to the single window approach in the spirit of joint management and one project, one review. In addition to being a product of the Atlantic Accord, an integrated regulator was one of the recommendations of the Ocean Ranger Commission report. The CNLOPB's single window approach has worked effectively for over 30 years in one of the world's harshest offshore environments. It ensures all relevant information is available and integrated, allowing us to make fully informed decisions. Bill C-69 includes provisions respecting the appointment and powers of enforcement officers, what I'll call EOs, which could deviate from that one-window approach and overlap with CNLOPB officers. If an EO were to order work to be stopped or conducted independent of the CNLOPB, that could result in safety being compromised. I should note that this potential also exists under SEA 2012, and it's something that relevant agencies are working on. However, Bill C-69 itself is silent on such matters of potential conflict between regulators, and the CNLOPB would be concerned should decisions affecting offshore safety be made without our input. A second issue with respect to the role and the authority of the CNLOPB. We want to ensure that we have clear legislative authority in any area in which we take on responsibility. Bill C-69 continues to designate the CNLOPB as a federal authority, and I've been advised that back in the mid-1990s when it originated, this designation was intended to permit substitution of review processes under the Accord Acts. Bill C-69 does not enable such substitutions. At this point, there are no consequential amendments for cost recovery or to Section 138(1) of the Accord Acts related to environmental assessments. There are also no provisions mandating the CNLOPB to carry out duties and functions under Bill C-69 or to collaborate or otherwise incorporate the obligations enumerated in Section 21 of Bill C-69 into the Accord Acts. It's also unclear what role the new Canadian Energy Regulator will play, given the offshore area in Bill C-69 includes the exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf by definition. Greater certainty is required to clarify the potential respective roles of the CER and the CNLOPB for oil and gas, and for renewable energy when it comes to physical activities within the Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador offshore area. We did note Minister Carr's comments to this committee on March 22nd about the possibility of amending the Accord Acts to provide offshore boards with additional responsibilities if there is renewable energy generated in the offshore. Ideally, the CNLOPB should have commensurate regulatory authority with the CER for the Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador offshore area. And one solution would be mirror provisions in Bill C-69 and the Accord Acts to ensure consistency in statutory interpretation. Third point in our review is the fact that Bill C-69 requires that the Minister must refer any physical activities that are designated projects and regulated under the Accord Acts to a panel. Our development plan approval process includes an environmental impact statement, a socioeconomic impact statement, a benefits plan, and other plans specified by the Board. It may also require a public review with hearings. This raises the question of when the CNLOPB's development plan process should commence, so we'll need to decide whether we should wait until we have the decision report in hand from the Impact Assessment Agency process. The CNLOPB recognizes that we'll have an opportunity to provide our expertise in the panel process. However, the decision-making at the conclusion of the panel appears to be exclusively federal, and that final outcome could conflict with the Accord Acts. We acknowledge the commitment of the Government of Canada to conduct a regional assessment in eastern Newfoundland, which could be used to inform and guide environmental assessments and regulatory decisions related to future offshore exploratory drilling projects in the area. As Minister McKenna indicated to this committee on March 22nd, there's an opportunity to avoid the need for a separate impact assessment for project-specific offshore exploratory drilling activities where a regional assessment has been carried out. This approach could avoid the need for lengthy panel reviews on exploratory drilling projects for which impacts and mitigations are well known and well established. The CNLOPB is working collaboratively with the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency, along with our colleagues in the federal and provincial departments of natural resources, in the design of the Eastern Newfoundland Regional Assessment. A fourth area of uncertainty stems from Section 9 of Bill C-69, under which the Minister may designate a physical activity that is otherwise within the duties and powers of the CNLOPB to be a designated project, as she or he could under SIA 2012. In theory, this could apply to any delineation well or geophysical program, both of which typically have not been designated projects in the past. In the spirit of joint management, our expectation is that this ministerial discretion would be exercised minimally, and such decisions will be taken in consultation with the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador and the CNLOPB, if the project in question is in the Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador offshore area. Our final area of observation deals with coming into force dates. Any amendments to the Federal Accord Act cannot come into force without mirror provisions being made in the provincial version. How the provincial statute would be amended to reflect many of the changes contemplated by Bill C-69 and the timing to do so, while upholding the principle of joint management, remains uncertain. We're also unclear how the CNLOPB will be expected to reconcile our existing obligations under the Accord Acts with Bill C-69 once it comes into force, given the precedence provision in Section 4 of the Accord Acts. Finally, our staff have reviewed 2 Bill C-69 related discussion papers which were released for public comment, and I'm pleased to briefly share our initial input today. Regarding the consultation paper on the approach to revising the project list, the CNLOPB supports the criteria-based approach to revising the project list. And to reiterate another point I made earlier, we're supportive of the plan for projects with potential for smaller effects to continue to be subject to other processes such as those under life cycle regulators. With respect to the consultation paper on information requirement and time management regulations, the CNLOPB stands ready to assist the Impact Assessment Agency in its review of documents which project proponents will be required to provide in the early planning phase. We can also support the agency in its engagement and consultation efforts, given our familiarity and relationships with stakeholders. We can provide expert input on documents the agency intends to provide to proponents in cases where an impact assessment is deemed to be required. And the CNLOPB supports providing proponents with certainty via regulation when the clock could be stopped for legislated timelines. In summary, the CNLOPB supports the objectives of Bill C-69 with due consideration of coordination with the Atlantic Accord regime and the CNLOPB's oversight that includes environmental protection and safety. If the legislation takes into account the necessary considerations that are relevant to offshore petroleum activity, and if the required Atlantic Accord Act amendments are made, the changes could improve regulatory coordination and contribute to a more stable and effective regulatory system, including post-assessment monitoring and enforcement. Thank you again for the opportunity to present. My colleagues and I look forward to addressing any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We'll hear from everyone and then we'll go to questions. Mr. Binder?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Michael Binder, and I'm the President and CEO of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, or the CNSC. Et je vous remercie de m'avoir invité ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you for inviting me to appear before you today to provide comments on the proposed Bill C-69.
Nuclear Safety and Control Act, or the NSCA. Our mandate is to regulate the use of nuclear energy and materials to protect health, safety, security, and the environment. To implement Canada's international commitment on the peaceful use of nuclear energy and to disseminate objective scientific, technical, and regulatory information to the public. The CNSC is a unique regulator. It is unlike any other energy regulator in Canada. As committee members surely know, in nuclear, an accident anywhere is an accident everywhere. Excuse me. That is why Canada established a nuclear regulatory framework that is based on international obligations and treaty-level legal conventions. And in my remarks, I've provided you with a list of key conventions. The key requirement of the international nuclear safety and security regime is for the countries to have an independent nuclear regulatory body whose decisions are based on the best available scientific and technical information and not subject to government or political review. Further, to ensure compliance with international legal commitments, Canada must regularly report its regulatory performance, undertake peer reviews, and undergo scrutiny by the United Nations International Atomic Energy, or the IAEA. I've provided a list of peer reviews recently undertaken in Canada in my tabled remarks. In line with this level of transparency and scrutiny at the international level, we apply rigorous domestic standards and regulatory requirements which we report on. The CNSC is the only energy regulator that publishes annual regulatory oversight reports that assess the safety performance of all its licensees. All of which brings me to the proposed Bill C-69. The CNSC has extensive experience in working on environmental assessment. Since the year 2000, the CNSC has conducted over 70 EAs and appropriately assessed the environmental impacts of all proposed projects. In every case, in the past and in moving forward, one thing remained constant. The CNSC was and always will be the responsible authority for nuclear safety and security. It seems to me that the notion of environmental assessment as a planning tool has been forgotten. The implementation and operations of a nuclear project may take many, many decades. It is important that the nuclear life cycle regulator has the tools to make all the improvements and adjustments, including environmental considerations, throughout the life of the project. Following its review of Bill C-69, the CNSC identified areas of the Impact Assessment Act that could benefit from increased clarity. We understand that the objective is to have one project, one assessment, and we agree. At the same time, to recognize the independence of the CNSC's regulatory decision-making, there must be a clear separation between the impact assessment and the licensing phase of a nuclear project. Furthermore, all conditions under an impact assessment should flow to the CNSC so they can be effectively managed throughout the project life cycle. It has been our experience in regulating uranium mines that harmonization with provinces in the licensing of uranium mines has been beneficial and efficient in avoiding duplication. We believe the new impact assessment regime should allow for cooperation and even substitution with provinces. We are also working with the government on implementation process and timelines. It is important that we all know from the get-go the length of time to get project approval. From our experience, industry can accept a quick yes or no decision. What is unreasonable is to get a maybe. As an example, it has now been more than 15 years since Ontario Power Generation started its discussion with us about Deep Geologic Repository, or DGR. A joint review panel was set up under SEA 1992. Extensive public and Indigenous consultation and hearings were held, and a report was submitted to the government in May 2015. A decision is still outstanding. Situations like this need to be avoided in the future. We are also participating in helping the government in coming up with an effective and reasonable designated project list. In our view, not all nuclear activities and facilities need to undergo a review panel process. For example, an isotope cyclotron in an hospital, a small research facility, or refurbishing a nuclear power plant to make it safer. All such projects should be left to the CNSC to regulate under the NSCA. So I would like to close by affirming that the CNSC supports the Government of Canada proposed changes to policy and legislation to enhance the impact assessment process, and we look forward to further collaboration with the new Impact Assessment Agency of Canada to clarify requirements and effectively implement the Act. Alors merci, c'est avec plaisir que je répondrai.
Thank you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
To all of you for your patience in condensing your words to fit within the 10, in fact under 10 minutes. We really appreciate that. I also want to thank you for providing your comments and statements both in English and French so we could distribute it to the committee. It's always helpful to have that. People can make notes as you're going along and put down the questions they want to ask. So we'll start with the questioning with Mr. Rogers. Oh, before I do that, I just want to welcome Michael Cooper, MP Cooper, to our committee today. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, panelists. I appreciate the presentations and taking into account the time, of course. So I'm going to keep my comments very brief and get to some questions. Some decisions made under the proposed CERA must consider any adverse effects that the decision may have on the rights of Indigenous people. Similarly, recommendations made by the Commission must take into account the interests and concerns of Indigenous peoples, including with respect to their current land and resource use for traditional purposes. So in your view, and I'll pose this question to Mr. Tessier, would the proposed CER have any impact on how industry takes the interests and concerns of Indigenous people into account when planning a project?
I think we're already seeing an evolution in the industry in terms of its engagement with Indigenous people, and the federal government has certainly taken an expansive view and placed a high priority on reconciliation with Indigenous people, and the industry is following in that vein. So we're already seeing a considerable increase in the amount of Indigenous engagement, and I would suspect that would continue under the new framework, perhaps with a more formalized legislative and regulatory framework surrounding it.
Thank you for that, and I'll go back to you again. In other jurisdictions like Norway and North Sea, exploratory drilling permits seem to be approved much faster, at least we're told. Are you confident that this legislation will lead to a faster process in which the CNLOPB, as a life soil regulator, will have authority over smaller projects like exploratory wells once SEA has completed the strategic environmental assessment? And similarly, do you feel the timelines in the bill are adequate? Should they be lengthened or shortened?
In terms of the question as to whether things will be faster, I don't know. I think there's certainly opportunity for improvement, but that would be conditional on processes and roles and responsibilities being streamlined. It's a question of how well resourced the regulatory agencies are going to be. And there's a fair amount of work left to be done in terms of sorting out those roles and responsibilities and resources in terms of federal agencies and us as the life cycle regulator. The question on timelines is a tricky one. Again, whether it'll be faster or slower and whether it'll be better or worse, I'm not in a position to say at this point because there are some details to follow in terms of how the agencies will work together. I think there's opportunity to have a streamlined and robust process. But again, that's conditional on the resources that are provided and the the mandates and marching orders of those who are providing the regulatory oversight and the decision making.
Again, I'm asking the questions, Mr. Tissot, of you because, of course, being from Newfoundland and Labrador, obviously concerned about the legislation in terms of the how it might advance the process or interfere in some way, looking at all sides. So what aspects of the proposed Impact Assessment Act would most affect the board's day-to-day operations and mandate under the Accord Acts?
So there will be a fundamental reset of our working relationship with the federal government, and the establishment of the Impact Assessment Act and the Impact Assessment Agency is going to change our day-to-day operations. We'll work more closely with those federal agencies, and we'll continue to work closely with subject matter experts in other federal line departments and agencies. So there'll certainly be an increase in terms of our day-to-day interface in terms of environmental and impact assessment. And beyond that, as I mentioned in my remarks, something like our development plan approval process, we're going to have to sit down and figure out how to best streamline our Accord Act responsibilities with the new working relationships that are being created under Bill C-69.
1 minute?
Yep.
Okay. Just one final question. I understand there's a commitment, of course, to move forward with the regional assessments, the offshore starting with a pilot in eastern Newfoundland region. So again, from the board's perspective, what is the importance of regional assessments going forward, and what can the board contribute to this process?
So regional assessment offers the potential to be highly beneficial for governments, proponents, Indigenous groups, stakeholders, and us as the regulator. I'm excited about the potential for a regional assessment to be evergreen as opposed to our strategic environmental assessment, which has to be updated periodically. We're talking to the agency about some sort of digital format, which we haven't moved past paper in our strategic environmental assessment. So that offers great potential in terms of everybody involved in this space. A regional assessment also offers the opportunity to streamline and reduce the burden on everybody I just mentioned. There is a real risk and a danger not only of fatigue on the part of those on the regulatory and government side, but also proponents and those we consult. We want to minimize consultation fatigue, and the chance to do things more collectively and robustly at the same time has great potential. The caveat or the condition is the governance. We got to get the governance right. So we want to be inclusive, but not overly cumbersome.
That sounds great. Just for clarity, when you've got 1 minute left in the questioning time period, I put up the yellow card as much for my colleagues as for you guys, and then the red means don't just stop what you're saying, but wrap it up quickly because you're out of time. Okay, so next up is Mr. Sopak.
Thank you. Again to the CNLOPB, I'm on your website here, and it appears to me that you're a regulator, but you're also a development agency, because you talk about Canada, Newfoundland, Labrador benefits and facilitate the exploration for and development of petroleum resources. How many jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador depend upon the work, the offshore oil industry?
So we aren't a development agency in the context that's commonly known in Ottawa, like a regional development agency. We do have a broad mandate that includes resource management and industrial benefits, just to clarify that for the record. Employment, I want to say 3,000 direct and 7,000 to 10,000 indirect, but there are people in the room who would have those numbers either in their brains or at their fingertips that could correct me if I'm wrong.
It's safe to say that the industry that you're a part of is a very significant and important employer in that region.
It's something in the order of 16 to 20% of even now of the provincial economy, and it's been as high as a third in the past.
Does the industry there depend on annual investment from outside to continue, or from within, or from companies?
So the typical offshore operator is part of a global enterprise, and there is a competitive element within those global enterprises for investment. They've got investment opportunities all over the world, and certainly a priority of governments is to make the Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador offshore area as competitive as possible.
Well, that very nicely leads into my next point, and I can assure the rest of the committee that
Can I
this
just
was...
stop you for a minute
Yeah.
just to make sure the bell started ringing? So I just want to make sure I have the unanimous consent of the committee to continue till about, what do we need, 5 minutes to get in the House? 5 to? Or 5 minutes?
Oh,
Okay,
oh,
so
the
we'll
clock
do
stopped.
25 minutes and we'll
Thanks.
carry on. Thank you.
Yeah, I very much appreciate your last point because it leads into my next question. The Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, when they were in front of us, and I'm quoting their testimony, unfortunately today, Canada is attracting more uncertainty, not more capital, and we will continue to lose investment and jobs if we do not have a system of clear rules and decisions that are final and can be relied upon. Unfortunately, CAP and the investment community today see very little in Bill C-69 that will improve that status. Is CAP correct in their assessment?
That's for me, I assume. I don't know. There's certainly competitiveness challenges faced in offshore Newfoundland and Labrador. I will say that the industry assesses the attractiveness of a region based on below the whole considerations, so that's the geophysics and geoscience, and the above the whole considerations, and that's things like stability and governance and the regulatory regime. I think we've got a world-class regulatory regime. The broader competitiveness discussions, they're a little bit outside my remit. We don't preoccupy ourselves with the economics of the operators. Those are more discussions that are better, and questions that are better placed towards governments.
Well, I kind of respectfully disagree with that because basically the reports are in, and this is an article from the Financial Post. Investment by foreigners has collapsed. Foreign direct investment in Canada clocked in at $31.5 billion, down 56%. And Chris Bloomer from the Pipeline Association, he made the point that new projects are grinding to a halt, and we have major problems as a sector and a country accessing new markets for our energy products to the world. So it appears that Bill C-69 is setting us down on a path of that's seriously going to affect Canada's competitiveness. And you brought up the issue of competitiveness, so obviously you are concerned about it given the business that you're in. How do you see this bill affecting Canada's competitiveness in terms of attracting investment around the world?
Maybe a good proxy for the discussion is to look at our nominations and our calls for bids. We saw record numbers in years gone by, and we had a relatively modest offering and uptake last year. We've got a call that closes in November, and I suggest the committee should all keep an eye on the bids that we attract in the round that closes in November of this year, and that'll be a really good indicator as to what you're asking.
I can assure you we will be watching, especially on this side of the table here. And again, I go to what Chris Bloomer said from the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association. He made the point that if the goal is to curtail oil and gas production and to have no more pipelines built, this legislation may have hit the mark. How much time have I got, Chair?
Minute and a half.
Okay. I'd just like to conclude with the legal opinion from Osler and Company. They say, despite the Government of Canada's suggestion that the new legislation will improve the efficiency and timing of federal regulatory reviews, there is nothing in the new legislation that will necessarily achieve these results, and many aspects of the legislation will likely have the opposite effects. So from the industry associations, of which your industry is a part of, may not be part of the association, but you're all part of the same industry, and from the legal opinion from a resource company, the consensus is emerging very quickly that this bill will encourage a decline in foreign investment in Canada and will slowly grind our energy production to a halt. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Duncan.
My questions will be to Mr. Watson. Great to see you. We've worked together a lot in Alberta on the Clean Air Strategic Alliance, which we both work very positively with, and we recommend at the federal level, bringing everybody together. We've heard mostly about the first part of Bill C-69, But of course, there's a second part, and that is the new Canadian Energy Regulator. A number of recommendations have been made both for the impact assessment part and the Canadian Energy Regulator. One of the recommendations that some of the witnesses are suggesting, and frankly the expert panel recommended, is that rather than ad hoc panels, that the recommendation is that there should be a full-time tribunal. Given your experience both in Alberta and as the head of National Energy Board, do you think that there is an advantage to having a full-time tribunal that develops the expertise to hear those hearings, or do you think they'll be able to deliver the same responsibilities effectively with ad hoc appointed people to panels?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. I think one of the things that will be important, that is a feature that's already designed into the legislation as we consider the nature of the projects that we're responsible for, which are pipelines and international power transmission lines, is the full integration of the life cycle regulatory oversight. And so, as you're aware, we have some of those features and have had under the NEB Act. And so we think that working in partnership with the Impact Assessment Agency and providing our technical expertise and our ability to deal with the issues that will arise under the Canadian Energy Regulator Act is a good way forward, and will maximize the strengths and the abilities of both organizations. So I think in our world, the integrated review process can work well.
I'm not raising the question about the integrated, and there are questions about that, about how many should come from the various energy sectors. It's more the question of, under the first part of the bill, the proposal is that there simply be a roster of people who could be appointed to panels, whereas right now we have a full-time National Energy Board. Do you think that there are any advantages to a full-time tribunal that may be lost with simply a roster of people who could be pulled up from time to time?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm in the best position to speak to that specific issue, because in our instance, as we exercise our authority over federal jurisdiction, it is helpful to ensure that we understand and have full knowledge and capacity to appreciate the issues across the entire life cycle, partly because we ensure the ongoing safety and regulatory oversight associated with those projects. I know that you've received information and advice from other people and other witnesses, including the Impact Assessment Agency, and I think the question might be, more appropriate for them. I can't really speak to the range of issues that they may be faced with.
Sure, and we look forward to having them back again, hopefully. Two other recommendations were made by Calgary entities, professor from University of Calgary and Pembina Institute. And they recommended something which regrettably will probably require royal recommendation because it would require additional resources. But they've proposed an independent energy information agency. And I think the intent there is, because of their experience before the various provincial and NEB tribunals, is it would be useful to have a common base of neutrally collected information that everybody can rely on and have trust in. I'm wondering if you think that would be some benefit to consideration of that to support the work of, frankly, all the tribunals under C-69.
We support the integration of the efforts relative to energy information generally. We play a certain role in that, but it's not a complete role, nor should it be a complete role. We collect certain data sets that are absolutely critical and have been part of our mandate under the NEB Act, but are also critical for the functioning of our role as an economic regulator and our understanding of flows of energy in the country and our responsibilities around import and export jurisdiction. So we contribute core data sets to the system. We understand and support the need for better integration across the system, and we would want to be a part of that as we go forward in the future. And we think we can and should strive for better integration and effort across the Canadian energy information system.
Very little time left. My other question is something that has been raised by some of the industry, and that is the concern about the transition period between the enactment of this law and the creation of the new entities and the continuation of the National Energy Board. I wonder if you'd like to speak to that at all.
Sure. I think I just really want to convey to the members that during this interim period, of course, we will continue to deal with applications under the NEB Act, and then we'll also be positioning our organization to respond to the changes that are required when we transition to the new features. So we're very mindful of our efforts in this transition period, but also of providing, clarity and certainty relative to applications that are already in process.
Thank you very much. Mr. Amos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our distinguished representatives of regulatory bodies across Canada. It really is it's a privilege to have you here. I feel as though the public would want me to ask, not just the constituents of Pontiac, but Canadians in general would want me to ask each of you to speak to the issue of public trust of our regulatory institutions and speak to how you feel the legislative proposal, Bill C-69, is actually going to successfully address it, and where there may be opportunities for enhancement in order to achieve greater public trust. Because at the end of the day, if we want the environment and the economy to go hand in hand, we also need the public to come right along with that process and feel as though that good projects are going to be well regulated and that they're going to be well assessed before they even get off the ground. I would go to Mr. Binder to start, but I'd invite each of our respective institutions to respond. What could be done? What could be done better in C-69? What could be modified to greater enhance public trust in our regulatory institutions?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's an important question in an era where people hear about fake news and alternative facts. We just had a recent poll where 40% of Canadians thought that science was a matter of opinion. In that environment, the question is, as a regulator, how do you have people come in front of us and participate in our hearing and accept our decision? So what I would like to separate is the project approval process, where we are trying to reach out. We have public hearings. We actually have participating funding for people to appear in front of us. It's webcasted. We issue annual report on performance of the licensees and facilities. All of this. And in case you haven't, by the way, in case you haven't been to one of our hearings, I strongly recommend you show up. It's a riveting material. There's a really interesting discussion back and forth. And hopefully, people try to understand the science and the technical information is being considered by the Commission. So we will not ever change a small percentage of people who are anti-nuclear, period. We hope that the vast majority, particularly in communities where there are facilities, where the approval rate of those facilities is very high. So in those host communities where they understand the work that's being done by the licensees, I think there's high acceptance. How do we bring it up across the whole board is a challenge. And we are trying to do and provide as much. We have a legislative mandate to disseminate technical and scientific information, and we try to do this best by using our website, our new media, et cetera, et cetera.
I appreciate that, but what I'm asking is around Bill C-69 particularly. What aspects do you see in this that could be enhanced in order to better achieve public trust? And I appreciate you're doing your utmost to communicate to the Canadian public, but there are clearly some, there's clearly a disconnect.
Point of order. This question is actually matter that is better reserved for those that are not regulators. This is a question being asked to one of our regulators about public trust. That's a question to be asked of other stakeholders, of politicians, but I believe it's inappropriate to ask that of our regulators that are present here at the table.
Okay, well, I understand your point. I'm just wondering if the member would like to adjust his.
I think the question is entirely reasonable, and if any of our witnesses feel uncomfortable asking the question, I'm entirely certain they will say, I don't feel comfortable answering the question.
I think I've been flexible on all sides, letting people ask questions and make statements and not ask questions, and so let's carry on, and we'll keep that in mind.
Maybe I'll pose the question to the NEB, and I'll start in a really positive way, because I had a fabulous experience, and I think my clients did as well, at the Arctic Offshore Drilling Review way back in 2011. Mr. Steedman was a key player in that process, and I commend him for his role in all of that. That was a process that I thought did engender public confidence. But there have been other proceedings the NEB has been involved with where such confidence wasn't achieved. What can you comment, or are you willing to comment on how C69 may best help engender public trust and public confidence in our regulatory process?
Well, I'll maybe mention some of the things that we've already begun doing, and I believe they're consistent with and are supported by Bill C-69. We recognized some time ago that we needed to be more proactive with our engagement with stakeholders across the country and participants in our hearing processes, and engagement with Canadians is necessary and appropriate, and we note that feature is enabled and expected under Bill C-69. I think regulators can also take steps to increase, transparency associated with what they do, and I would point to one of the initiatives that's been taken on both the Trans Mountain expansion and the Line 3 replacement project with our Indigenous monitoring and advisory committees, where we're working collaboratively with them to be completely transparent regarding our activities on life cycle oversight and how things are done, which actually ensures safety and reduces harm associated with the potential effects of an operating pipeline. And so through that process, we're learning how to work better together and engage within First Nations and the Métis Nation to ensure that we're really transparent and effective in our engagement with them, particularly around life cycle oversight matters. So there's a number of things that I think we've been attempting to do, and I see that they will be able to be continued as we move forward.
That's great. That's it. We've got time for one more questioner. So, Mr. Fast.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing here. First question would be to Mr. Tessier. I took note of the fact that you said we have a world-class regulatory regime. You stand by that statement?
Absolutely, yes.
It has been suggested by many on the Liberal side that, in fact, the regulatory system in Canada is broken when it comes to impact assessments, when it comes to our energy regulator. Tell me about the kind of consultation that typically goes into a proposal, a project proposal that comes before you.
So there's two levels. With respect to environmental assessment, there's a couple of different venues through which we will engage the public and stakeholders and Indigenous groups. As I mentioned, we do strategic environmental assessments, so those are sort of broad-based, large geographic area, every 5 to 7 years, looking at the biological and geophysical sensitivities of an area. Layered on that is project-specific environmental assessment, of course, which the committee would be well familiar with. And then kind of the third primary venue through which we invite public feedback and input is through something like a development plan approval process. So for something like a Hebron project or a Hibernia, the big sort of household name projects, there is a third process there wherein you can look at the socioeconomic and the other considerations in let's call it a mega project, and they often include public hearings.
Thank you. Question to Mr. Binder. You stated that industry can accept a quick yes or no decision. What is unreasonable is to get a maybe. Then you use as an example the 15 years since the Ontario Power Generation started discussions about the deep geologic repository. And I'm assuming you are lamenting the fact that it's taken 15 years, at least 15 years, to get that project approved. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what in this bill, Bill C-69, would actually speed up that process?
Well, as I think I pointed in my remarks, real clarity on timelines on every step of the way. The bill can improve things if the early planning about a project can be done very, very quickly and get to a no quickly so industry can move on. If it's a no, tell us quickly. If it's a yes, then allow them to go through the environmental assessment in a reasonable timeline and then punt the conclusion of the environmental assessment to the regulator to implement. To me, that would be the ideal kind of a thing that if you focus on the exact timelines with limited showstoppers, etc., then I think there's room for improvement.
Well, as you know, Bill C-69 includes significant discretion on the part of the minister to suspend and extend timelines. In fact, the bill is riven with opportunities for the minister to delay the moving forward of a particular application. Do you feel that is helpful in moving these projects forward in a timely way?
I can't comment on that. All I can comment is that it was in the bill, there was some time limits that are put into the bill. And if they adhere to the time limits, then it looks okay. I cannot comment about whether the minister then will find some way to stop it or not. That's built into the process.
It certainly is built into the process, which brings me to my last question to you, and that is, you've suggested that at the end of the day, the decision on whether a project should be approved or not should not be a political one. It should be a decision based on science made by the regulator. Am I correct in understanding that?
No, what I said was that we have a lot of experience in doing joint review panel. In fact, we've done it from the early as a control board. We have been involved in joint projects where there was all kind of models. So I think what people forget is that the EA is a planning tool, and we would like to get that plan approved quickly. Once it's done, give it to the regulator to manage. So all I'm focusing on, we will leave with what is being structured here as long as the planning process is quick.
Okay, thank you.
Good. So I want to thank, on behalf of the committee, our guests today and for your very thoughtful briefs and answers to the questions. We also appreciate your patience as we're running back and forth. And I will suspend as we do have to go into the House for votes, and then we'll be back for the next panel. Thank you. much. I want to introduce our guests. We have from West Moberly First Nation, we have Chief Roland Wilson, and we have Bruce Muir, Senior Environmental Planner. From Wolf Lake First Nation, we have Chief Harold St. Denis, and we have Chief Lance Haymond from the Kebewek First Nation, and you will correct me if I haven't got that right, so I hope I have got it right. What I'd like to say is I have heard that you might want a little bit more than the 10 minutes that we have assigned. I understand that and I appreciate that. We are mindful that we want to get as many questions as we can, so if you can keep it brief, that would be great. I know I don't mean brief, but if we can keep it within that 10 or close to the 10, it would be very much appreciated. Just to let you know, I try to help when you're 1 minute out from 10 minutes, I put up a yellow card just to help you. This means you're out of time, but don't just stop in the middle of a sentence. Wrap up what you're saying, and we would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Who would like to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Chief Wilson? Nope. Nope. Yep. Would you like to go first?
Do I have to push the button to?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Or is it on? Well, he's doing it. Okay.
Just so you know, they're going to watch you, and they will turn your mics on and off, so you don't have to worry about pressing the buttons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's going to happen up here. Thank you.
Thank you for requesting us to come and present. We had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and through the mix-up, it wound up being a black and white copy. We had really nice, pretty pictures for you, so I was going to try and lighten up your day. I imagine you've been here all day. I am Chief Roland Wilson, West Moberly First Nations. I am located in northeastern BC. My nation is Daniza. We are the Dani people of northeastern BC, the heart of oil and gas, forestry, coal mining, wind farm, large hydroelectric projects, Site C Dam. I don't know, hope everybody here knows what that is. Our presentation was put together real quick to talk about the changes to Bill C-69. Thank you for inviting us there. Thank you for considering what we have to say. Part of what my presentation is going to be about is the considerations that got us to this point in our territory. I know I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to be going through this real fast. The title of our presentation is Neither Subject to or Inferior to the Crown's Right to Sustainability. This comes out of our court case that we had with BC and a mining company in northeastern British Columbia. The province had proposed a mine in the area of critical wintering caribou habitat, the burnt pine caribou herd, which is, because of that activity, is now extinct. The caribou in the North Peace are considered to be endangered now on the Species at Risk Act, and there's not supposed to be any kind of activity like that happening around them. So part of why this is in here is the courts in British Columbia stated that the Crown's responsibility to develop does not supersede the First Nations' rights on that. They're equal, and they're supposed to take that into consideration when they're doing their permits and things like that. So background qualifications, we were invited to come here to present. I thank you for that. This third page slide is the treaty territory. Treaty number 8 is the largest, most comprehensive of the historic treaties. It encompasses BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, part of Northwest Territories. Our people, the Daniza people, have been on the ground for over 13,000 years in northeastern BC. We hunted the mammoth that lived there. So we've been there. We are continuing to be there, and we plan on staying much longer. We are the Daniza people are dreamers and prophets. That's our culture, and very much land-based, small family groups that move through the territory. We adhered to treaty. There's a bit of a misprint on the bottom. The adherence, the West Moberly First Nations adhered in 1914 to Treaty Number 8 under the Hudson's Hope Band. we became the West Mowbray First Nations in 1974 when we separated from the Hudson Slope Band and became the Halfway River First Nations and the West Mowbray First Nations, just out of the reasoning that we were in two separate spots, and it was easier for us to maintain our own identity that way. The treaty promises us a number of things, Treaty Number 8. And of those promises are the oral promises that have been taken into consideration. One of those oral promises is free from white competition. It gets talked about quite a bit. The other one, big one, is no forced interference. The no forced interference was used from the Commissioner's report in 1899, was used in the Mikisew Cree court case, as the oral promises are a part of the context of the actual treaty. The page 5 is just the outcomes of the environmental assessment. We've been poring over the changes, recommended changes from the EA document to what now is, I guess, being considered to be the Bill C-69. It's pretty much the same document, just different words in it. And part of the context when I said, we thank you for your considerations, and the considerations have got us to this point, is what I'm going to take you through now. Page 6, title of the page is We Cannot Breathe the Air. All through our territory, we have signs up all over the place about sour gas, oil and gas activities here and there. The page 7 is We Cannot Eat the Fish. If you look at that page, the image on the left is my son. That's his first fish he caught. But we caught it out of the Williston Reservoir, and the Williston Reservoir is contaminated with methylmercury. So all the fish in the reservoir system has high concentrations of methylmercury, and a fish this size is very unhealthy to eat. So typically we would have released that fish and let it go back, but he snagged it so bad that it was damaged, we had to take it and put it in. The image on the right, the pictures that you have in your thing, you can't see it, but if you have the digital copy, it's a map that shows red lines all through it. And those red lines are the extent of what the mercury filtration of the system is in the Williston Reservoir. If you, to the right-hand side there, that light blue area, that's where the W.A.C. Bennett Dam is. In 1968, they commissioned the dam, and 1969, I believe, well, in 1969, they went to full pull on the Williston Reservoir and created this largest man-made lake, they call it, in Western Canada. I think it's the third largest in North America. And the whole thing is full of methylmercury. All the fish in it are contaminated. We can't eat them. Slide 8 is the land that we cannot use to hunt or trap anymore. Our signs through the whole area restricting us activity into those areas. No hunting and shooting residents. There's camps everywhere in the bush up there. Slide 9, animals we cannot eat. The image on the left is a female caribou. It is identified as a species at risk animal that is in eating contaminated soil in a lease site that has not been cleaned up. She's dead. She died. The image on the right is a species at risk protected bison that got into a well site that was not fenced, got her head stuck under the pipes, and they had to put her down in order to get her out of there. That was a species at risk animal. We're not allowed to hunt these animals. Page 10, we cannot drink the water. So what rivers, waterways that are not affected by the Williston Reservoir and the methylmercury have coal mines on them with high levels of selenium being dumped in them. So there are signs all through the territory about not being careful not to drink or eat the fish out of the water because of the high levels of mercury that's there. Forests we cannot use. All through the territory, there's signs up restricting us from camping through our areas. The image on the right of the cabin on the edge of the bank, that's the Williston Reservoir, And it's the sloughing that's been happening since they flooded, went to full pool on the Wilson Reservoir. They said when they first considered the Wilson Reservoir that that would eventually stop. It hasn't stopped. It's been 40 years and it's still sloughing in there. And it's new debris that goes into the water every year. That cabin has since fell into the river, into the reservoir. Page 12. This is, I apologize for this, but this is what our reality is. This is a dead caribou. This is the last male caribou of the Burnt Pine caribou herd. When the province issued the mining permit for the mining company to go up there, an illegal permit, because they didn't actually give them the permit, they told them to go ahead and get started and we'll get you the permit. And they never did get them the permit. They went up there and built this big pit. And then when we got involved and the court case ensued, they didn't reclaim the pit. They left the pit there. And the male, there was 2 caribou left up there, and the male of the 2 got too close to the edge of the pit and fell in the pit and died. We discovered him that spring in the bottom of the pit. He fell far enough that he actually broke one of the antlers off his head there. That Burnt Pine caribou herd has now become extinct. When we went to court to try and protect the Burnt Pine caribou herd, there was, from the provincial analysis of the caribou in the region, 425 caribou left in the South Peace. There is now, to date, 219 caribou. And this is after all our court case and everything that we've been doing trying to protect the caribou. The West Mowbray First Nations and the Saulteaux First Nations, our next door neighbors, have come together, and we've been running a penning program, a maternity pen program, where we have one of the herds the closest to the communities. We have went from 19 caribou, we've got them back up to 70 caribou. So we're doing a recovery program ourselves on that, because we couldn't wait for the federal and provincial governments to come together and do this. You know, so now the government has piled in. I don't know if anybody has heard that there's a herd in the south end of the province called the Selkirk herd. They believe they're functionally extinct now. There's only 3 left, and they're all females. And this is all since the planning has been started. This is the state of what we're in here. Now, in the beginning, I talked about the oral promises and the no forced interference with everything. We can't hunt the caribou because there's not enough of them there. The federal and provincial governments in their recovery program are not recovering the caribou to levels of harvesting. They're recovering the levels to levels of sustainability. They want to stop the depletion or the wipeout of the caribou. But they're not curtailing development. They're not doing any recovery program of the land, rebuilding, you know, the habitat zones that they're in. What they're doing is flying around in helicopters and shooting all the wolves and protecting the high elevation habitat. You know, and not understanding that in the spring the caribous come out of the mountains and back down into the valleys and live in the valleys, and they're getting annihilated down there. You know, so we went from having to see a caribou. Caribou were considered to be an animal that we could always go to the mountains. We could always get a caribou. They were called considered to be a convenient food. We'd want to get a moose or an elk, but we would, if we couldn't find them, we could always go to the mountains. We could always find a caribou and get. It's kind of like the fish. If you were hungry and you couldn't find anything else, you could always go to the river or go to the lake and catch a fish. Right now,
sorry to interrupt. You're giving very powerful testimony, and we do want to hear it. I'm just mindful of the time because we do have votes that we're going to have to go back to.
I'm just about done.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Slide 13 is probably the only cumulative effects presentation that, study that's ever been done. The image on the left, it was done by Dr. Faisal Mullah, the David Suzuki Foundation and Global Forest Watch. This is all of the current BC and federal development that's happened on the land. This is the 5 watersheds around my community. The image on the left is the actual footprint. The image on the right is the footprint with the 500-meter buffer that the federal government uses in the area. So when I talk about no forced interference, this is what we're presented with in our territory. Slide 14. When we went through the paperwork and looked at the changes, the recommended changes, suggested changes of the environmental assessment, the current issue with the BC and federal government's environmental assessment is that there is nothing in there about First Nations. And when we go through what's being recommended now, there is no consideration of First Nations. What we hear and see is they'll take it into consideration. Well, we've seen what consideration gets us. What does that mean? You'll take it into consideration. Is it the intent of the environmental assessment to unjustifiably infringe the treaty? That's a question that I have for you guys. That's our question. Is it the intent to unjustifiably infringe the treaty? Because we're not in here. The First Nations are not in here anywhere. We should be at the very beginning. The treaty is a constitutional document. It's part of the Constitution of Canada. But yet we don't show up until the very end of it. After permits have been released, after studies have been done. This is where we find ourselves in Site C.
I hate to do this, but I really do. I know I've gone
You didn't put
almost
your card
5
up.
minutes over, so I don't hit the gavel, but I do. I don't really want to
She said
cut
she
you
was gonna
off,
put the card
but
up.
I've given you almost double, like again another 5 minutes,
Yeah.
so I do want to leave some time for the other chiefs.
Yes.
So, is there your point is well made. We do have the presentation in front, so you've made some remarks there. How about we get into the details as we go through our questions? Is
Sure.
that fair enough? Is there anything? You're good with that?
Did somebody write down my question?
We certainly did
Okay,
hear
because
it loud
that's a
and clear.
question I would like to get an answer.
Absolutely. Got it. Okay. So I hate to cut you off because we really respect that you're here and we do want to hear from you. So let's hear from who would like to come up next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had asked for a bit more time than the 10 minutes, just because we know that the committee members haven't had seen our brief. We did submit a written brief, before the deadline, but I guess it hasn't been translated yet.
They're coming
And
through.
the document I'm going to read, no one has a copy of this either, so we'll take our time to try to make sure that we get all our points across. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee members for the invitation to speak to the Standing Committee on making amendments to Bill C-69. My name is Chief Harry St. Dennis from the Wolf Lake First Nation, and I'm joined here today with Chief Lance Heyman from Kabuwaik First Nation. Today, we represent two First Nations, Algonquin First Nations, in Quebec. We have provided a written brief as per the deadline, as I mentioned, with a number of recommendations and amendments for your review. I understand you haven't had time to read our brief due to the rush timeline surrounding this push towards legislation, and as such, I will provide you some background. The Algonquin Nation is made up of 11 distinct communities recognized as Indian Act bands. 9 are located in Quebec and 2 are in Ontario. The Algonquin Nation has never given up Aboriginal title to our traditional territory. This includes all the lands and waters within the Ottawa River watershed on both sides of the Ontario and Quebec borders. Aboriginal title is held at the community level within the Algonquin Nation. Our two First Nations, along with the Temiskaming First Nation, assert unextinguished Aboriginal rights, including title under Section 65 of the Canadian Constitution. Inherently, our lands and waters are part of the Anishinaabe Aki, a vast territory surrounded by the Great Lakes in North America. For centuries, we have relied on our lands and waterways for our ability to exercise our inherent rights under our own system of customary law and governments known as Anakanagewin. This law is based on our mobility on the landscape, the freedom to hunt, gather, and control the sustainable use of our lands and waterways for future generations. That is how Europeans discovered us, as a well-established society in control of the Ottawa River watershed. We had a vast trade network supported by our own economy that included levying tolls on canoe flotillas that descended the Ottawa River from Morrison Island. We were not only the gateway to the continent, but the technology provider of the only craft that could navigate the rivers ahead. In no other part of the world have water and the canoe had such a huge influence on both Algonquin culture and the development of its history post-European contact. What we once knew and shared on our territories under treaties of peace and friendship with Europeans has been abused. Our ancestors never contemplated our territories to be industrial, nor has government legislation ever adequately protected us from industrial development. We continue to regard ourselves as keepers of our lands and waterways, with 7 generations' worth of responsibilities for livelihood, security, cultural identity, territoriality, and biodiversity, a sentiment expressed by many other First Nations to your committee. These responsibilities stem from a history of traditional knowledge and governance on the land that provided our Anishinaabe identity, as opposed to how we have been recreated by Crown governments through such legislation as the Canadian Indian Act. In response to your task of gathering information for Bill C-69 that ensures that environmental assessment legislation is amended to enhance our consultation, engagement, and participatory capacity in protecting our lands and waterways, one of our guiding recommendations is for your committee to look beyond the Act itself and take into account other pieces of legislation and policy that further weaken Aboriginal people's capacity to participate in the resource development review process, including and not limited to the Federal Comprehensive Claims Policy. I am concerned here that various legislations, including this current proposal, to combine previous legislations under an Impact Assessment Act will come together as an assault on Indigenous sovereignty and protection of our land, air, and water. This cumulative policy effect could intentionally strip environmental protections across the country as resource development proceeds and colonialism completes itself. Therefore, our nations are here today to seek a different but joint legislative approach with your government that provides a strong foundation for recognition, protection, and reconciliation of our inherent and constitutional rights and interests that is consistent with the articles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, now adopted by your government. Today, in our presentation, Chief Heyman and myself intend to give you a quick profile of our communities and our experiences related to environmental legislation on our territory, as well as a brief outline the problems we still have regarding Bill C-69. Specifically, we are asking the committee to make amendments to Bill C-69 concerning the following items: reconciliation, implementing Indigenous institutions, and a nation-to-nation relationship, troubleshooting provincial environmental assessment, legislation, rather than simply relying on it, strengthening protection over our traditional waterways, and implementing Indigenous knowledge and impact assessment. Chief Heyman will now speak on that, on 3 items, and then I will conclude.
Thank you very much, Chief St. Dennis, for the introduction. Good evening, Madam Chair and distinguished committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to discuss this important matter. As Chief of my community, Kibawek, I represent approximately 1,000 Algonquin members. Although our reserved lands are in Quebec, our traditional territory lies on either side of the Ottawa River Basin, where our members live, work, exercise Aboriginal rights, including title, in both Ontario and Quebec. Our jurisdiction is transborder. And before starting, and for the record, I'd like to address some procedural concerns in regards to this hearing. The short time frames, short notices, insufficient funding, and very tight time frames for Aboriginal communities like my own have made it very difficult to present comments. For your reference, Kibawek and Wolf Lake First Nation did prepare comments on all environmental and regulatory Environmental Act reform requests by your government, as well as participated in 2 expert panel sessions. We also fully participated in the AFN's technical review of Bill C-69, and we give our full support to their 25-page submission and clause-by-clause recommendation for amendments. Regardless of our combined effort, Bill C-69 appears to have not included our key messages and resorted to a matter of tweaking CEAA 2012 over modernization. In our view, true modernization of the Act does require reconciling the wrongs of previous legislations and policies that have worked against Indigenous people in Canada.
Can I just interrupt you for a minute? We're just
Yes.
going to stop the clock. I just have to get agreement from the committee that we're going to continue as we did before. 5 minutes before votes, we'll go back to the House. Okay, please, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's fine. As part of true modernization of the Act, we ask you to revisit the Act's original sources and acknowledge how the Act's evolution over the past several decades has materialized against us. Stronger language and amendments pertaining to ecological and First Nation rights protection is imperative. Otherwise, we appeal to this committee that this bill is a failed attempt at both meaningful consultation with First Nation communities and modernized legislation as set out by this government. I conclude these introductory remarks with no disrespect to your committee. Your work is both urgent and critical to all First Nations in Canada. In fact, there is a special assembly with the Assembly of First Nations next week in Gatineau on this topic, and I would urge you in all of your work leading to your final amendments to Bill C-69 to be resolute and determined that this piece of future legislation does operationalize First Nations perspectives consistent with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action and the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Modernized legislation must not further disparage or trivialize our assertion of territory, environmental knowledge, constitutional rights, and the implementation of UNDRIP. Clearly, there is a strong link between reconciliation and environmental assessment and protection of our rights on our territories, a link that is becoming clear to us every day. We see our youth interested in environmental science, and Algonquin social ecological knowledge is growing. We see the need to develop an Algonquin Institute for environmental assessments on our territory. However, our terms for reconciliation must be supported in writing in this legislation and policy. The problem is government is defining what reconciliation relations are as a priority to extinguishment of rights and title under a planned federal legislative framework to transition bands currently under the Indian Act into self-government agreements or comprehensive claim agreements or modern treaties, which the government regards as self-determination. First Nations rights and title cannot be undermined by the colonial interpretation of reconciliation. Reconciliation should be a stated purpose within the legislation and should further Canada's commitment to implement UNDRIP, including our right to our own interpretations of self-determination on our territories. Furthermore, the legislation must be consistent with the protection of Aboriginal rights and title, recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. In terms of our second item, implementing the Algonquin institutions and nation-to-nation relationships, we view our nation's values, interests, and needs can be marginalized on a regional environmental assessment table or board where our constitutional rights and interests are diluted and are ignored by the more dominant actors. Our constitutional provisions are unique and should be treated as such. In our presentation to the expert panel, we introduced the concept of an Algonquin institution to encourage Algonquin involvement in the Canadian environmental assessments in order to pay more careful attention to the matters that are of Algonquin concern. This is desirable not only to combat development biases of proponents and government agencies that we have experienced under CEA 2012, but to explore the greater role Indigenous institutions can play in the economics of environmental impact assessment and ecosystem service planning, including evolving markets for project monitoring and other environmental services. We request to amend Bill C-69 to authorize nation-based Indigenous institution as a governing body to exercise powers or perform duties or functions in relation to impact assessments under this Act, not excluding Indian Act bands with Indigenous jurisdiction over unsurrendered title territories. In terms of troubleshooting provincial environmental legislation, rather than relying on it for assessments and information gathering, I would like to bring your committee's attention to the Government of Canada's recent reform of its Environment Quality Act by way of the adoption of Bill 102 on March 23, 2017. You should be concerned that for a bill having potentially such an important impact on our Aboriginal title and Aboriginal rights, First Nations in Quebec were not consulted. Furthermore, the new consolidated version of the EQA makes no reference whatsoever to the rights of First Nations in Quebec. This is shocking to us that 35 years after the recognition of our rights in the Constitution of Canada and after years of jurisprudence, no reference is made to our rights, nor to the need to consult and accommodate, and in some cases obtain our free and prior informed consent, despite the fact that we are often the main communities impacted by damages done to the environment. We have Aboriginal rights applicable in Quebec and that need to be reflected in legislation and any directives in order for our meaningful participation in environmental impact assessment and review processes in Quebec. In closing, I advocate for legislating clear and mandatory protection and enhancement of Section 35 rights in both federal and delegated review processes. Chief St. Dennis will now conclude with a couple of items. Thank
Can
you.
I just interrupt before Chief? Just before you get going, I just want to ask. I've given an additional 4 minutes. Is it the will of the committee to continue with the witness? I know that we're taking it away from the time we have for questions. It's the will of the committee.
It's going to, yeah, it'll be just about another 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay. It's the will of the committee. Okay, please.
Okay. Okay. So. I would like to discuss the strengthening the protection over our traditional waterways within Bill C-69. Wolf Lake First Nation is a non-reserved community, and like many First Nation communities, assigns great importance to the protection of our waterways. The 2012 amendments to the Navigable Waters Protection Act affected First Nations from coast to coast to coast. As I mentioned earlier, the free and unencumbered use of the waterways on our territories is critical to our culture and ability to exercise a range of Section 35 rights and for other important economic purposes like running our tourism businesses. Recently, in your Parliamentary Standing Committee hearings, Kelly Block asked of the Honourable Transport Minister Garneau to provide an example post-2013 where navigation was negatively impacted due to Navigation Protection Act being in place, and referred to that not one witness throughout the regulatory review hearings in 2016-2017 were able to make a comment. What Mrs. Block outlined, in our view, was the failure in consultation and setting adequate timelines for the legislative process. Both Kabewak and Wolf Lake First Nations were not aware of the hearings opportunity, but did describe in our written comments on reforms to SIA 2012 and the Navigation Protection Act how navigation was impeded on not one but 2 locations on our territory since 2013. These cases were not on unprotected waterways, but even worse, on an actual scheduled waterway under the new Navigation Protecting Act, namely the Ottawa River, the main highway of our nation. The following examples demonstrate this new idea of scheduling waterways really provides no protection for navigation under the Act. Our first example is of a 3-meter chain link fence installation on the historic La Cave Portage by Ontario Power Generation while they conducted minor maintenance activities on the Otto Holden electric installation. Here, the OPG took the liberty to install a permanent lock fence installation on our historic portage. This is without consultation or notice, and was followed by OPG's subsequent refusal to grant continued access for our community members on our canoe business clients' navigation without the presentation of a third-party insurance. The gate remains in place and the issue is unresolved. The second incident was Public Works Temiskaming Dam Complex Replacement Project on the Upper Ottawa River at Long Sault Island, where Wolf Lake First Nation operates a branch of our Algonquin Canoe Company outfitting business. Here in 2013, without the federal government acting as it should have on a major project's interprovincial project designation provisions within the legislation, and the Minister of the Environment at the time refused our request for project designation. The Public Works Real Property Branch refused to engage in a framework for consultation and accommodation to guide decision-making regarding this development, and subsequently all access to the lower river was impeded for portage for Algonquins and non-Algonquins alike for over a year. Furthermore, the Public Works-led environmental effects evaluation under SIA 2012 completely scoped both our First Nation communities and threatened lake sturgeon species completely out of the process, as Transport Canada, NEB, and DFO issued authorizations without consulting us. Once again, the watershed and our rights were impacted by this development. The great watershed of the Kitsisipi River is an ancient trade and travel route throughout the Algonquin Nation, as the shores, islands, and portages along the route. We asked this government why was our navigation impeded under the Navigation Protection Act on a scheduled waterway. What navigation protection insurances do we really have in scheduling of waterways? Furthermore, it is unclear to us whether the working group of ministers will ensure the Crown is meeting its constitutional obligations with respect to Aboriginal and treaty rights within this new legislation, and ongoing regulation to provide innovative, effective, enforceable, and specific Indigenous and environmental protections to the Ottawa River. For example, Aki Kojoan is a key sacred site to our peoples here in Ottawa. It's also known as Sarchadjar Falls. Aki Kojoan was and continues to be a site of prayer, offerings, rituals, and peace. These activities are important work for us as custodians on our waterways and communities as we redefine and reconcile the interrelationship between our people and the river. We have closely examined the threats to Aquicojoan and the Ottawa River watershed and have made recommendations to both the National Capital Commission and the Canadian Heritage Minister Melanie Joly that a much higher priority must be given to recognize and preserve Aquicojoan as a key healing point for Algonquin peoples and all cultures here in the National Capital Region. Therefore, as Algonquin leaders, we are together exploring all possible options that can address legislative shortcomings impacting the protection of our sacred waterways and jurisdiction, including and not limited to the pursuit of separate legal rights for the waterways. Wolf Lake and Kewauwak introduced a resolution at the AFN National Assembly which to give legal recognition for the Kitsisipi River, the Ottawa River, that explores the concept of legal identity for the watershed as a means of protecting, and it's attached for your reference later. In terms of our recommendations, Bill C-69 remains overly politicized, with the Minister making final decisions on the scheduling of waterways or designation of projects, and the Cabinet making final project decisions after a full impact assessment process. Based on our experience, this would leave little incentive for us to participate. Similarly to what we are discovering within this process to date, why put all this work into it if a government already has its mind made up? Prime Minister Trudeau specifically promised to return lost protections to waterways in this country. That is not necessarily going to happen and is entirely the discretion of the Minister in scheduling new waterways for protection. We are requesting the Act guarantees in writing that it will schedule any waterway First Nations request to be scheduled. Without this amendment, we have little choice but to pursue legal identity for the Ottawa River waters, because as far as we are concerned, in our view, all protections have effectively been lost. We support the opportunity that the Impact Assessment Act is to take into account Indigenous knowledge along with scientific information and community knowledge. However, only traditional knowledge is required factor to be considered in the environmental assessment, and the Act does not go far enough as to require that assessments and decisions be based on the broader scope of Indigenous social, ecological, and cultural knowledge.
I'm just mindful that
Yeah.
we do have
Okay.
votes very soon, and I've given you almost 12 minutes over your 10 minutes time.
Okay, so well, there's a couple of more pages, but I will end it there, Madam Chair.
Sure.
You will get copies of the.
We
this,
do have
but-
copies,
yeah,
absolutely,
okay,
in front of
but,
us.
I would just like to, finally say that when the Right Honourable Prime Minister addresses the Assembly in, for the National Assembly, every time he says this, he opens his presentation with the same words. I would like to thank the Algonquin Nation on whose traditional territory we are gathered. I want to thank them as the past, present, and future protectors of this land. Well, Madam Chair, I think that this legislation, would be the perfect legislation to give life to those words and to give life to UNDRIP. I think this would be the perfect legislation for this government to prove that once and for all it's serious about reconciliation and about working with the First Nation peoples. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want for the record to just make something clear, because I did see in your testimony that you were very concerned about the conduct of this hearing, as you mentioned. For the record, the committee adopted a process right at the beginning that would be setting its operation for speaking times and speaking orders, and that is applied to all of our committee work. So there's nothing unique about what we've done here. We've been consistent, but as you can see, we're very generous with the time when it's required to hear from witnesses. So please do not see that as a barrier. We also do not fund apart from paying travel, and that's consistent across all the work of committees. So I just apologize if there was any misunderstanding there. So I'll open it up. We have 13 minutes till we have to be sitting in our chairs. So let's do 7 minutes, which can we just, we'll have maybe 3 minutes, and then we'll have to go. All right, so that doesn't give Linda any. So what about 2, and let's do 2 minutes and see if we can, go ahead. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Miigwech, for allowing us to have these meetings on the unceded territory of the Algonquin people. It is so important for us to have you present here today to share your words and your thoughts and your concerns with us on this important bill. Will and I actually sit on the Indigenous Committee and are studying Bill 262 right now on UNDRIP. And from what I understand, from what you're saying, is that UNDRIP should be fully the rights framework, rights and recognition framework, the tables, FPIC, should be recognized and embedded within this bill. Would you agree with that?
Yes. For sure, 100%.
As well, Chief Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Am I done? Oh, okay.
1 minute.
So under that, under FPIC, there have been 3 different types of descriptions of what FPIC actually means. It could mean good faith without really obtaining it. A type of consensus-oriented process, which is called collaborative consent, or AVITA. And I guess I'd like to get your sense on what your view of consent and the meaning of it within an FPIC framework.
Question, and I've got, it's a good question if you can give it in a very quick answer.
Well, I think it all depends on the project or what's being proposed. I know Quebec has the same issue. They think that it means veto, automatic, and I don't think that's the intent of it. But we should have a say, depending on what the project is and what the impacts are. I wouldn't say that it's an automatic veto on anything, but we should have a say, and a meaningful say, and it should be, I think, taken in that light, not an automatic veto, because everyone is afraid that, they're not going to agree to anything, But the fact is that when you're talking about project development and economic development, our people need to work too,
I hate to do this, but I have to end it there. And Mr. Fast, you got 2 minutes.
Okay. I'd ask the same question of Mr. Wilson. You've been quite outspoken about concerns you have for your treaty rights And if FPIC is adopted, as it appears the Liberal government will do, what do you understand FPIC to mean? Is it a veto? Is it some kind of collaboration between a nation, in a nation-to-nation discussion? What does it look like?
I can express what we've gone through. Site C is a prime example. We were never opposed to the construction, to the development of the energy. What we were opposed to is the means of creating the energy. Site C, flooding of the last chunk of Peace River Valley we had. We were never given the opportunity to have that discussion. So free, prior, and informed consent for us is be sitting at the table before the decision gets made. They made their decision to build Site C, then came and talked to us. That becomes a mitigative process, right? They've already decided that they're going to do the project. We had no other choice at that point down. Now we find ourselves in court trying to stop this thing. There are proven alternatives to this project that we never got a chance to have a talk about, that are now identified being better solutions than to what Site C was. So FPIC, I agree, it depends on the project. You can't just, it's not a veto, but Site C was not a good project, is not a good project, not by any means. It's been proven that it's probably the worst thing that we could be doing, but we never got a chance to sit down and talk about that. We were told we're building Site C, what are your concerns? And we'll take them into consideration.
Okay, Madame Joliboux.
Thank you. Do you share the concern expressed by other First Nations that a federal assessment should be required not just for certain projects on a list, that impact assessments must also be triggered when a proposed activity may cause adverse impacts to the migratory birds, the rivers and the lakes, Indigenous groups, or their rights recognized and affirmed by Section 35 Constitution Act 1982 and UNDRIP? Both of you, if you can. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Speaking through experience, you're allowed to infringe on the treaty if it's justified. That's law. And unjustified, that's why I asked the question, is your intent to unjustifiably infringe the treaty? There is a test that's supposed to be performed called the Sparrow Analysis Test to justify whether or not the impact is justifiable. That has never happened. We were told that it didn't need to happen on Site C. Site C is the largest infrastructure project BC has ever seen. It's $12 billion. If that project does not justify a Sparrow Analysis Test, what project does? It's a death by 1,000 cuts. You can minimalize everything if you have the pen to do it with. They structured the whole thing away from a justification process. We were saying, let's look at alternatives, and they said no. Right? So they unjustified. They know now that there is no need for the power for Site C. There's no reason to destroy the last remaining piece of that river, but here we are. We're in court now because of this. A little First Nation, two little First Nations in northeastern BC have to fight Canada, BC, and BC Hydro, a Crown corporation with billions of dollars in their pockets to try and justify a development that's not needed.
So you've come a long way, and I really appreciate the wisdom that you've brought to the table here for the discussion. I am sorry that we couldn't spend more time with questioning. It's because of what's been going on in the House today and that there's votes. Turns out there is going to be 3 votes, which is unfortunate because that's going to be quite a bit of time, which prevents us from being able to come back. So we want to thank you again, and I will have to end the meeting. Okay.